Well, we're back on the bike and I got the carburetor absolutely 100% apart. And there is absolutely nothing clogged. I got gum out coming through every passage as it should everywhere, because I got the exploded view of the carburetor to see where all the passages went. And everything is totally clear. No restrictions. This, I don't know if this is, I think that's supposed to be on the second from the top. It's on the third from the top. It has some writing on it, but I can't read it because I don't have my magnifying glass. I don't know if the camera focuses on it or not, but anyway, we got it all apart, and I'm gonna wait probably until the correct main jack comes the end of next week before I put it back together. But anyway, I'm gonna see if I can get this seal for the throttle shaft, and we're just gonna kind of let it sit here until we get the main jack. So I was while the exhaust is off, I put it in my bead blast cabinet and cleaned it up, and it had a little hole rusted in it right there where this little bracket, which I broke a bolt off in, so I'm going to have to heat that with a torch and turn it out. And but it was kind of where this padding is, so it wasn't leaking, but it was definitely rotted out. And I'll have to clean all this little bracketry up too, and after I get the broken bolt out, and obviously clean this and paint it too. But yeah, so the muffler's cleaned up. I got to grind the weld, and that's ready for paint. And I painted the shield that goes behind this with a high heat paint. That's kind of a heat shield. And then I painted the little flange where it bolts to the head, and I painted the little things there that go in the port that hold those were black originally on this bike. On the 175 they're like a plated metal, but this you could clearly see they were black, so that's why they're back to black. There we go, all repaired. Yeah, the exhaust is all painted now. Got a painted exhaust on a bike that the engine doesn't run right on, but anyway, it had to be done, so that looks better. That's got 2 coats. I might put a third one on it in a few days. This is that Rust-Oleum. You gotta let it dry no more than an hour or no less than 48 hours, otherwise it reacts. So anyway, there we go. Painted out muffler. Well, as long as the exhaust is off, we might as well do it all, right? So I'm going to paint this with gloss black single stage acrylic enamel. I just primed it with this stuff where I cleaned it down to bare metal. I actually put this thing in the blast cabinet, and I taped off the XL250 instead of removing it, because these little things here, I didn't want to take a chance in breaking anything, and there's like an asbestos washer under the metal one, and I just don't want to destroy that, so I'm leaving that alone. I taped the screws in because I want to paint them, and this looks like it'll be a good way to paint them. I don't know, I might have to take them out. We'll see. Yeah, I'm going to take them out and put them in some cardboard. That is the paint that I am going to be using. Yeah, it came out pretty darn good. It's windy outside to close up the garage, but it's pretty much all dry to the touch. Well, basically, still a little tacky, but that looks so much better. And once that tape's off there, that'll make all the difference in the world. And once it's all together on the muffler and that heat shield, and I painted the screws with the gloss black, and if it burns off, I'll just take them out one at a time and paint them with high heat. But they got asbestos washers, but they do thread into those. So they might get hot to where the paint burns off. We'll just see. If it does, like I say, we'll deal with it, the screws then, but I think they'll probably be fine. And while I'm waiting for carburetor, the main jet, I soaking it in lacquer thinner, and I got all the important areas submerged, and this will just keep it from evaporating quickly. And hopefully that, if there is any crud left in there, it cleans it out. There we are with the tape off. That looks so good. Very happy with the way that came out. Finally got the Petcock kit. This is the part that was causing the leak. That, and hopefully that corrects it. And the kit came with these seals and O-rings, piece of sandpaper, and the little filter screen. That's this, which I cleaned really well, but I'll put the new one in it and save the old one. And come with these too for cleaning out your ports. And I noticed on some Petcocks there's not a tube here. Some models have one with a filter screen and some don't, so maybe this one never had one. Doesn't look like it ever had anything pushed down in there. But anyway, I got a new Petcock coming anyway, but we're going to rebuild this one because the new one won't be here for a week, and I want to get this thing somewhat together. So let me, oh, and the sandpaper came so you can clean, that's the parting surface, so you want to put it on a flat surface, hold your paper, and then it's 2000 grit, that sandpaper, so it takes a bit, but that cleans it up, and that's probably cleaning up the seal. So let me throw this thing back together. I cleaned everything up here where the muffler kind of goes. I polished the mounting bolts up for the muffler, cleaned the top of the head and around in here, just kind of neaten it up while it's apart, and do that much less I have to do when I clean it up and repaint it, and clean the port and all around here and the bolts and or the studs, I should say. Clean these up. These are the nuts that hold it on. This is all the stuff for the exhaust, so it looks a lot better. And of course the exhaust system all back together, ready to go back on the bike. Came out pretty nice. I had to replace this bolt. I broke it. I had to heat that nut that's welded to the band there, cherry red, to turn it out, and every time it cooled a little bit it stopped turning. I had to keep it cherry red to get it out. But anyway, let's put the exhaust back on the bike. Yeah, that looks better. That bolt that's down here polished up, yeah, you barely even see that, but yeah, without a rusty pipe there and a rusty muffler, that made a big difference in, you know, all that cleaned up. Alright, there we be with the exhaust back on. There's a little part I'm trying to find for the bike. It's a throttle shaft seal. And I don't know if this is the issue or not, but you can clearly see that it's bad. So I called the Honda dealer and it's obsolete. I searched eBay, couldn't find one. Went to Bearing Services and they don't have a seal this small. I have one more seal place I'm going to try tomorrow, and if I can't find one, I'll just have to make something that'll work, because I think that's a vacuum leak that's going to cause issues. Okay, we're going to get back to work on the carburetor for the 12th time this has been apart, and I got the 120 main jet, and it clearly states right on it 120, and it's a Honda jet. And I got, the seal was obsolete, but the guy at the motorcycle dealer recommended this place called MFP Seals, and they're in Troy at 600 Minnesota Road. So if you need seals, I'll just put the address in the description, so if you need it, But anyway, yeah, I got two of them. This is the original one, and I got two of them in case if I screw one up installing it. So anyway, yeah, whoops. Well, anyway, that was the old seal, but anyway, I got two new seals and a new one somewhere here in the pan. It just went flying in here. Anyway, let me, I've had this soaking in lacquer thinner for about 4 or 5 days, and I've swished it around a few times. I'm going to go clean it out with some gum out and blow it out with compressed air. I know the carburetor will have no restrictions or anything in it and no vacuum leaks because I'm going to change this little seal. That might have been the whole problem, who knows. But if it still doesn't run right, the only way I can get the flywheel off, check the key, is I got to pull this cover off, because the dynamo is screwed to this part of the block and the flywheel is behind it. So the magnets are rotating out here and the dynamo is in the center of it. So if I got to go to that work, I'll pop the engine off, I'll get the paint mix to match, I'll paint the engine, because I really think it is a carburetor issue. I don't think it's a sheared key, but we're going to look at it if it still has the issue. And I'll pop the top of this off, the cam cover, and check the compression release. If that's okay, then we'll take a look at the compression release. But all in all, I do think it's all fuel related. I don't think it's ignition, I don't think it's timing or anything else. And so hopefully this takes care of getting it back together. Anyway, the exhaust looks, I think I showed that. Yeah, I took it while I had it off. I blasted and painted. This video is over, you know, a week of just putzing around. So if I cover things more than once, sorry. Yeah, I used the 175 to go and chase parts for the 250. I haven't had this out in about probably better than 2 weeks, and so, you know, I mean, it's just the weather's been either stifling or it's been storming, and it's just been sitting there. And this, easy to get out, fun to ride, and trying to make this to where it's fun to ride. But anyway, like I say, if I have to pull a motor, well, yeah, I'll just, if the motor's out, I'm just going to repaint everything while it's apart, and then I'll have to hunt for another carburetor if it's not the key or the compression release. I'll have to hunt for another carburetor, because the only other thing I can think is this has a crack in it somewhere that I can't see. So, but it's definitely not plugged up. So let me gum out it and blow it out, and we'll reassemble it. That was a little bit of fuss getting that in there, but it's in. And that would have been, you know, that would have leaked vacuum down around the slide and may have caused it, I don't know, not to draw as much air through those air bleeds. You know, it's just a guess. And I cleaned the carburetor up and really inspected it for cracks. And I don't see any cracks anywhere in it. I mean, I really looked it over good. But, you know, it could always have one that you can't see. So anyway, we're going to put it together and hopefully it runs good, hoping. I also took a little drift punch and punched all these little brass plugs. Let's see, that's a vent. That one, that one, that one, that one, and there is one in there way deep down in that I was able to, just, you know, in case if they're leaking around the edge on that one right there. You know, I mean, if they leak, it causes a problem. So you got to make sure they're all sealed. And they're usually just take like a flat punch and just tap them. Usually just make sure they're seated in. All right, this thing is whistling Dixie clean. Let's get it together. This is my last go on the carburetor. This is 12 times I've had this thing apart. And everything is set exactly to factory specs. It's got the 120 main jet, the 100 air jet, the 45 slow jet. The screw is open 1 1/4 turns, which is a spec, and it's 0.94 or 24 millimeters the float level. everything, and it's set on the second clip thing on that pin that's in the Venturi. That is the factory spec. Was, see that pin that goes into that little jet there? That's set on the second, which is where it said to start with. The air bleeds are clean. I went in the pitch dark of night, shined light in each air bleed and each thing, and you could see through them all. And everything is clear. Gum out goes through them. Blow compressed air through them. I mean, this carburetor basically is like brand new. So if the bike doesn't run properly, it's definitely not the carburetor. If it still doesn't run right, I'll be pulling the engine out of the frame and tearing it apart, because there's nothing wrong with this. Zero. It's absolutely 100% rebuilt. I couldn't see any cracks in it or anything, and everything's set to factory specs. So let me put it on, and I don't know, put the tank on. Tank's sitting there. I gotta put a Petcock on it. Or I rebuilt the original Petcock. I did get the seal kit for it and rebuild it, put a new filter screen, everything in it. But I got a new one because it doesn't have the... But then I see a lot of them, like if I looked in the microfiche, it doesn't show a tube with that stuff on it. But the seal, there's a new seal on the left and the old one on the right. Or no, the old one's on the left, new one's on the right. And I'm pretty certain that that was a vacuum leak. I don't know if that was the cause of the performance problem or not, but it's got a new seal in there. Well, we're going to hope for the best and hope it runs. Well, you can see I got a new Petcock. The sediment bowl isn't as deep as the original, and this is slightly, it still comes out the side, but the other one comes down and over, so it'd be sticking out the side right here. So I'm not too concerned about that one. I'll keep the original one, so if I sell the bike and somebody wants the original, they can have it with the bike. All right, I'm going to put the new Petcock in the nice clean tank. That's where it goes. Well, it runs exactly the same, like crap. So I guess it's pull a motor and pull a flywheel and see if the flywheel key's sheared. Runs crummy as can be. Alright, I took it out on the road and just opened the throttle up in 5th gear. I mean, I went through the gears. I ran it hard. It just runs beautiful on the road once you're out of the idle circuit. I mean, I can really accelerate. It doesn't bog out or cut out. Before, when you get past half throttle, you might as well just turn the switch off. The engine just died, and it goes now. It really gets up and goes, and I can get through all gears and just wide open throttle. It flies. But at idle, it loads up and just eventually stalls after a couple minutes. It'll start first kick every time. I give it just a little throttle like that, one kick when it's loaded up, stalled from loading up idling. One kick, it'll light right up. And I started it cold after I took it out of the garage. One kick, it was running. And so the main jet was definitely hogged out. It had a 120 originally, and that was definitely hogged out. And I put a 110 in it, and the 110 wasn't enough jet for it. It was starved of fuel. Put a 120 in it, and it rips now, and runs like it should. It's not running rich on the high end like it was before with the unhogged out 120. So I'm assuming that if they hogged out the main, they hogged out the idle too. So I'm going to order a new idle jet for it, and hopefully that'll solve the issue. Everything in that carburetor is clean spotlessly and new, other than the idle jet. I should have just ordered one to begin with, but it didn't look like it had been hogged, but I'm betting it has. And because if they had this vacuum leak up here, and there was O-rings jammed inside the carburetor under here that weren't supposed to be in there. I looked up in the microfiche the exploded view of the carburetor to see if that was, because it didn't seem to me that should be in there, and it shouldn't. So, and the nylon bushing was over here, and the nylon bushing should be over here. So after going through the exploded view, everything is put together exactly as it should now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this float drain out and put a clear hose in there and run it up here. And the gas should be 1 to 2 millimeters from this parting surface in the, like you run a clear tube up and you turn the gas valve on, and it'll show where the gas level is in the float bowl. It should be 1 to 2 millimeters below this parting surface. So I'm going to do that, but I'm going to order a idle jet. Because the bike runs perfect now, other than at idle. It loads up at idle. Other than that, she rips and runs good. I'm really happy with the way it runs. And the painted up exhaust, some of the paint got baked on the pipes and everything, so that, you know, because you're supposed to bake it on. But yeah, I gave it a good run on the road. I thought maybe if I took it out and rode it 5 or 6 miles, you know, and like I say, as long as you keep the bike moving and don't sit at a stop idling, it runs perfect. So again, I'm gonna order an idle jet, and hopefully that takes care of it. All right, I got the new idle jet. It actually ran worse with the new one than with the original one. The original one's back in, but it only runs good when I take that screw, take this mixture screw completely out of the carburetor. It'll sit here and run all day like that. It'll cruise down the road, no problem. As soon as I put the screw back in, and I set it to the spec as a turn and a quarter, but it doesn't, it'll sit there and load up. So we'll turn it to, I'll set it to specs, and you can turn it in all the way. It makes no difference. It makes no difference where the screw is set. When it's out, the engine runs good. So it's half, 1/4. That's factory spec. That's what the shop manual says. Everything on this carburetor is 100% set to factory specs. So I'm kind of thinking they hogged out the jet where that needle goes in, because this actually really did nothing. And so we're gonna, maybe it won't start, I don't know, it might be flooded, but we'll see. Let me set the camera down and start it. All right, see how it's loading up? I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's just blowing black smoke, and I'm holding the throttle on. See how bad it runs? And see how it just loads up and stalls? But again, I take this screw out, which is the mixture, idle mixture. I think the more you open it, the more air it lets in. It's an air mix screw. But anyway, let's just take it out again. Get the little spring out of there too. I replaced that throttle shaft seal. I think maybe that seal's a vacuum leak, and maybe they hogged jets out to make the thing run. And now we got a vacuum leak. Look at that. No black smoke. Runs perfect. As long as that's not got a screw in it. So either something's plugged back in here still, or they hogged out that little tiny jet where the screw goes in there. Because it'll run all day like that, but it'll suck dirt in there. You know, I can't run a tube from the air cleaner, but it runs down the road like that, everything. It runs perfect. Yeah, it'll sit there and run like that for an hour. Crazy, huh? Yeah, I don't know what to do. I'm at a loss. I think I need a carburetor body, and they're just not available anymore. So, yeah, I don't know what to do with it. My brother suggested filling one of these with solder, and then just a little at a time, drill it out until you get it to where it runs right, which means, you know, I've had the carburetor apart 14 times now. So maybe after another dozen times, we'll get it to run right. But I do think that, you know, I'm just thinking. I don't know if I can. I don't know if you can see in there or not. But I think that's the issue, is that little pilot hole way deep down in there has been hogged out. It's the only thing I can think of. You know, I'm thinking the carburetor body, something's messed up in it. I think where the screw goes is if you can turn this all the way into where it bottoms out, just ever so slightly smooths out. And I think that jet's been hogged out in there that this goes into, or somebody reefed this in or something, because you can take this out and as you see it runs fine when it's the idle. It just idles rich. Everything else it runs perfect. And you take this out and it idles smooth. It rides down the road nicely, but it's got a big vacuum leak. So anyway, this part, all this carburetor and stuff's obsolete. So there's a motorcycle junkyard north of here about an hour and a half, and he had one carburetor that was on an engine still that was outside. And he took the carburetor off, and I'm having him mail it to me so I don't have to spend with road construction, probably 4 or 5 hours on the road to go up there and get it and back. You know, if I still lived up in Romeo, I'd easily drive up there to get it. I've been there before. But anyway, I got a carburetor, used one coming, and then I found this part of the body from here to here, new old stock. And I mean, it's just the body. There's no seal, no shafts, no nothing. Just the body. So hopefully that's salvageable. It looks like it was in a flood, and he wanted a lot of money for it, but I made him a really way less offer and he accepted it. So anyway, we got that coming too. So I have a used and a new carburetor body coming. So between this carburetor and the new part I have coming and the other carburetor, I think I can make one good carburetor that'll run on this bike. There's no doubt in my mind this is the issue, is the carburetor. I've been through the engine. I adjusted the timing chain, went through the ignition. I tried a different coil and condenser. I put 3 sets of points in it, brand new. Checked the timing 4 times now, the valve lash 4 times. Everything's spot on this bike, except it just idles rich. It blows black smoke and just idles rich. Everything else, I mean, with the 120 main in it, it rips down the road. You can cruise along 50 miles an hour effortless with it. But as soon as you come to a stop and idle, if that screw's in there, it starts loading up and it eventually stalls. If the screw is out, it'll idle perfect. Once it's warmed up, you got to put the screw in to start it cold and choke it, and then once it's been running for a minute, you can take the screw out and you can go riding. It runs fine, but I don't want to suck dirt in there, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. So anyway, I'm going to try and fix it. Hopefully, if that doesn't do it, then the bike will be for sale for sure. I got a used carburetor off of a bike in a motorcycle junkyard, and it's pretty rough. It's stuck. This won't turn. So I'm going to disassemble this and throw it in a coffee can full of lacquer thinner. And then I got this body coming, new old stock from a Honda dealer in Washington State, old inventory, but it's by no means perfect. It's, you know, it's got issues from sitting around. It looks like it was in a flood. But the guy says he thinks it's totally usable. I'll see how much video we have. If it's around 18-20 minutes, I'll let you guys up a video here. And if I do, and you like the video, definitely hit the thumbs up icon. It helps me out, gets my videos more views, gets my videos a little more attention. Really appreciate it if you do that, and subscribe by hitting that 348 engine icon. And thank you for watching my videos too.